Hey, so I just saw your video response, and I just thought this would be an appropriate topic to discuss the evolution of consciousness. I know in the video you mentioned spiral dynamics and a couple other things that I've been sort of um, critiquing or thinking about more analytically to see if maybe they did glaze over some important issues, and because of that, that model of reality is lacking something that's really going to help it, as actually as you mentioned, naturalize it, make it something that we use, and that we can all agree with because it's something that's just natural. It's something that just is, and not some other separate, weird, hyped up ideal or myth. So, um, just to start there, I guess, uh, what I think the problem with spiral dynamics and evolution of consciousness, a lot of the models have, is that they don't really take into account the postmodern critique of this whole idea of this linear evolution that guides us up, time's arrow sort of thing, and progress. These are more of Western myths than they are, some kind of universal truth. So, as you mentioned, the deconstructing these uh, mythologies and Western assumptions and philosophy, I guess post-structuralism, basically saying, look, here's the reality tunnel, to quote Wilson, that the West has been living in, and it turns out there's all these different reality tunnels that if we want to really have a more accurate natural map of what's going on, you have to take into account the fact that so much of what we perceive to be objective is actually relative. Um, so, I mean, that kind of leads me into another question, which is, well, then, what really is? What are we naturalizing? Are we naturalizing the idea that civilization is sort of just one cultural path that we went down, and perhaps we shouldn't have this sort of tiered hierarchical vision of the world, that there isn't anything beyond that? Because I think that's the debatable component. Not that there isn't some evolution of consciousness, but that our ways of thinking about it tend to be more limited, linear, and hierarchical, and maybe there's a more complex way we can think about these sort of ideas. So I want to know what you thought of that, just that general idea that evolution of consciousness is possible, but maybe not in this kind of rigid, static, hierarchical way that it's being portrayed by some people. So I think, all right, okay. So when I've been recently thinking about that same question too, and what kind of came to mind is the idea that maybe if what biologists do for evolution and what I'll say anthropologists do for humans, specifically human evolution, what if we applied that to how societies interacted, to see if there is this evolution of consciousness? Because then we wouldn't be naturalizing it, because we'd be taking into account biological factors and sociological factors, and what components of our consciousness, and this isn't even with this is just a starting point, what aspects of our consciousness could facilitate an evolution, could facilitate more complexity. Um, well, one of the things, of course, since you mentioned you've read Robert Anton Wilson, um, have you read his book Prometheus? Because he posits in that book this eight-circuit model, which is sort of similar to spiral dynamics. So I just wanted to get your input on what you thought of the eight-circuit model in comparison to spiral dynamics, because I found it to be much more intuitively accurate because it created a baseline for you to work from, a baseline that was natural. What we learned from psychology and what aspects of mammalian behavior that function and spill over into a society and explain why society behaves a certain way, um, and what is emerging that is particularly new and potentially going to shift the weight in the same way that the mammalian brain shifted the weight on the reptilian brain. And I'm just using this is totally unscientific terminology, but the idea is in evolution, some kind of disequilibrium happens, whether it's a giant hole in the food chain. Some species gets wiped out, for instance, the dinosaurs, giving another species a chance to expand into that vacuum, um, or perhaps it's been taken out of a niche and it needs to develop some new thing. So my question is, how can we apply that to evolution of consciousness, human consciousness? How does our biology play into this? How does the intermingling and interactions of society partake in this? And is it possible that we can create a naturalized version of the evolution of consciousness, and more like, and I mentioned this in another video, a phylogenetic tree of consciousness? If we could have more things that were at least sort of like that, and I thought the Eighth Circuit consciousness model was sort of like that. I think we would probably be on a good start to what this real evolution of consciousness actually looks like, and have it be reputable enough to be able to play with some of the variables, and really show how this could be a universal, more scientific model. Now, of course, one other thing that I wanted to mention, I didn't mention earlier, even in science, there's the problem that working with what isn't always easy. Sometimes there are different what is, if you know what I mean, different reality tunnels that science is not immune to. So it's very possible that we could be, I don't know, using science to interpret reality one way when there's an equally alternative way. And this is totally just what Wilson is saying, too. So I wanted to get your thoughts on that. And also, props for reading Ishmael. It's one of my favorite books. I totally grew up with that in high school. So yeah, I mean, one of the things I've always had trouble with, maybe not trouble, but sort of a conflict, what to do with when I, read Ishmael and then I read Ken Wilber or Teilhard de Chardin's theories, and they have elaborate, intricate theories. Now, in the past couple months, I guess, I've kind of fallen away from Wilber's theories and kind of appreciated his predecessors more, like Teilhard and Gebser and those sort of people, because of the thought that they put into their ideas was vastly more complex, and to me it kind of stood as, well, damn, we have this totally different interpretation of what is, and how do we reconcile the two? How do we reconcile the deconstructionists and the postmodern view with, I don't know, a more holistic, bigger picture? Is it possible to balance the two? And I guess that's sort of what's going on in the modern world right now with science, trying to get past the idea, get past deconstruction, and actually work on a third way that isn't just myth building and relative. So, I mean, that's basically where I'm at right now. So yeah, like give me your opinion on what you think of these ideas, and yeah, thanks for the video.